So in the last video, I presented a fairly out there notion, and it did encroach on what might be considered sort of New Age. To me, it's just the direction that my thinking processes have gone in the best method I could, that is to say, still going down the avenue of integrative theories and as much empirical data as I have at this time. But on the other hand, I do tend towards the more subjective and intersubjective spheres, which is just a bit of an unbalance on my side. I'm going to postulate something that connects with Terence McKenna's thinking in relation to that, maybe to further it perhaps in a certain direction. In his theorizing, he postulates that potentially the singularity in December 21st, 2012 has a great deal to do with AI or artificial intelligence. This goes, sort of connects somewhat with Kurzweilian thinking, that at some point in the future computers will reach human level intelligence. He, I think, says 2020, but I believe that was a $1,000 computer, and it is the case, at least on record, that military has computing capacities that are at least 10 years ahead of ours, arguably a fair bit more, but that's getting more speculative at that point. But one notion that could be posited is the idea that, much of the internet is running through Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi is, in the air, in a sense, right? It's electromagnetic signals, essentially, that's getting sent from a hub. Our brain is, sort of electromagnetic. Our heart's stronger than our brain, and I do think that our heart's playing a big role in this, especially in the augmentation of it. So I think it's very conceivable that we could augment ourselves to gather this data in an altered state of consciousness, and in so doing, we're sort of hooking up to this intelligence and actually crafting it through these systems. So in that regard, I wouldn't be placing the sentience on the computing system. Rather, it's the human's mutations that are stretching out towards the computing systems to mutate oneself to adapt to the complexities that we face presently. This gives us that intermind that I was speaking about before, and something about the time that I'm going to address in a minute. Actually, I'll address it now and then I'll spin back on this. So, those people arguably working on the creation of this system, that would be to say that they are intentionally mutating themselves, or unintentionally, or some regard unconsciously doing this. There would be, in this regard, a laying down of the structure, and the degree of complexity that they're laying down might be such that they're getting data about what that system would do at that operative performance in the future. In some regards, therefore, you're seeing into the potentialities of the future through the laying down of this mutating self that's stretching itself energetically, in some regards, over the system or into the system, or being in resonance with the system to gather data. Now that sounds very strange. How would that really work, and would there be some sort of sign in the system, that is to say that there would be input of data? And that would be an interesting question, follow-up, to see that if there's people claiming this sort of thing, is there an extraction of data that's taking place in the vicinity of the people that would be doing this? So in other regards, in another way of framing this is to say that, especially as this gets nearer to the end, there would be reflections, I think, on the higher order systems, in my opinion, because it is a pattern that's taking place, and so that would in itself reflect the certain kind of complexity in the future in that regard. So this idea is one in which, in some regards, the electromagnetism of our body is actually integrating with these computing systems to gather data that is needed to deal with an interobjective space, the global complexity problems that we are facing, and they are increasing, requires, in my opinion, an intermind to deal with these sorts of complexities, because the individual's perspective just isn't going to be big enough to handle it. Now, arguably, we would still, in many regards, have to go through all these other stages of development. However, one statement might be made that this is something that Ken Wilber brings up in Boomeritis, that once that capacity is reached by the computers, there could be, in a sense, sort of an instant bringing up to that level of that intelligence. In some regards, I still think that that would take some time, but it might be much like human development in the mother's womb, where we actually get to focuses. If you think of the development in the womb, the child doesn't really have to do anything to get up to almost higher levels of emotional capacity. And the reason they don't have to do anything is because the almost maybe something like the morphogenetic field is providing the data for that being, so it's already kind of laid down, so it doesn't really have to do anything. Once it pops out, then it has to do the work of the culture. It has to integrate the data of the culture, and that takes some real time and struggle for that being. So arguably something like that might take place once this system is sedimented, once it's laid down, then the individual will have sort of access all through the sort of first 6 stages of spiral dynamics, and then maybe there's a working off of after that that is something that the individual would have to do on their own. Be well.